Mark Rogers TV, voice of college football, coming your way with some Miami talk on a Thursday night. We are 9 days away from most of the teams playing next Saturday. We are just a week away from some Power 5 teams getting on the field for the first time. We are just a couple days away, meaning 2, from some FCS and Group of 5s playing. But we talk Miami, LSU. We're, of course, 10 days away with the special Sunday night edition of college football that opening weekend with the Tigers taking on the Canes. We got Cam Underwood on the line from State of the U. Cam, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. Yeah, 10 days away from the kickoff of this season that we've been looking for a long time. So downhill towards, not just talking about football, but having real live football. I'm excited.
Yeah, the anticipation is just crazy because I know you like the NBA, you like other sports, but it seems like they just shut down and then you blink and you turn around and they're back in camp. But with college football, it just seems like forever. And we've been talking about last season and going over and reviewing it a zillion times, plus trying to project what's going to happen this year. We will finally have a game of fresh play, activity, action on the field to analyze, and that's going to be so much fun. And it's a meaningful game, obviously, for both teams, as we have two very talented teams going at it. So your impressions of what you have seen and heard and read and reported on from Canes camp recently.
Yeah, the team has a lot of talent this year. So I know that we lost a lot of guys, but there's a lot of talent to like. The skill position talent obviously is going some of the best skill position talent that you'll find on any roster in America. Excuse me. Linebacking core is, top 3 in America. Defensive line, while it has new names that, are going to replace some of the veteran contributors, there are, good players there. Secondary has good players there, but some unproven talent, but a lot of talent there anyway, even if it hasn't been proven at this level. And a quarterback who at his peak is, very, very good, but at the valley is very, very bad. And inconsistent at best. So that's something that's going to need to obviously change, a stable of running backs. There's a lot of things to like. So, the team is working hard, getting towards the season. The Canes camp is now over because, we're in basically into season mode now. Just got the media schedule for this next upcoming week. And yeah, I mean, we're in game week mode already. So I think that, practices or, we're going to hear from players and coaches on things like Tuesdays and Wednesdays this week upcoming. And then after the game. So we're, in full game mode and, everything is going in that proper way. Of course, you got a couple injuries during Canes camp to reshuffle a couple of things. Michael Irvin II, starting tight end or the number 1 tight end coming into the fall or into camp. He hurt his knee, so he's out for at least 4 months after surgery. So Brevin Jordan is now at the top of the position group, but that was something that I've spoken about expecting for a long time. So it just kind of sped up that process, and you never want to see it or hear about an injury. So that was one thing. LSU transfer George Brown Jr. Hurt his knee, and he's out for an undisclosed amount of time. And obviously he's going to probably miss the LSU game, which for him I'm sure is impactful because he went to LSU, left LSU, and came to Miami. So you circle that for, a couple years down the line, like, hey, I'm going to play against the guys, that I, want to share a locker room with. And then, you have that kind of injury. And then just a couple, nicks and dings. You have guys missing, a day here, a day there. Michael Pinckney missed like a day of practice a couple weeks ago. Trajan Bandy a couple weeks ago. Joe Jackson had like a preliminary or a precautionary elbow brace thing. He was not demoted, but he was working with the 3rd team. Joe Jackson was for a couple of days just to kind of be precautionary about his elbow. And then he's back as a full go participant in practice recently. So, a lot of things like that. But yeah, just hearing good things about the freshmen. And, Mark Richt said that a bunch of freshmen are going to play like base offense and defense snaps against LSU. So not just special teams, although that's a place where I expect to see freshmen play as well. So, it's just kind of your normal camp. You see guys redefining their bodies. You see guys redefining roles or finding new roles for themselves on the team. Like a Trayon Gray, Chalk Gray, who was a high school quarterback at Miami Carroll City. arguably one of the fastest guys on the team at 6'2", 6'3", like 235, 240. He's a big dude. So he's playing fullback, and all of a sudden, he's up to the number 3 running back slot. And honestly, I didn't think he was going to really play running back here ever again. But yeah, he's redefined himself. He's come out as a 5th-year senior, and he's working hard. So, just a lot of things like that. And I'm really interested to see how, when things are fully settled across the board, who really, in the music world or in the band world, we call it tree shaking, where you go and you kind of shake the tree and see what stays and see what falls. And yeah, we need a tree shaking. That LSU game, we're going to see, okay, like, yeah, we've heard about this kind of a thing, and I talked about this on the radio today. It's a great indicator in practice what's happening and hearing from the players and coaches. But you can only trust that insofar because it's against your teammates. It's under, the watchful eye of your coaches and things like that. When you're now going against another team of scholarship players, then you're going to really find out really where things shake. So I think that Miami's in a good spot. I do like where the roster is. I do like where the chatter is from everybody, from players to coaches. But, obviously this is a time for optimism. So, I want to see what happens on the field. And I think that everybody's really excited for September 2nd.
A lot of hey hellos to Cam and myself, a lot of score predictions and Miami record predictions on the chat. Final scrimmage just in the last 24 hours, Cam. As you mentioned to me before we started to record, the 3rd of 3 is in the books. Anything that we can glean from the various scrimmages and especially this last one?
Yeah, just really that there are playmakers on this team. On offense and defense, there's a lot of speed. This last scrimmage, Miami put the ones on the same team, so first team offense, first team defense, against the best of the rest is what they called it, and the best of the rest were LSU. And it was, the typical come from behind scenario. So the coaches spotted the second team or the fake LSU team 27-0 lead, and then put situations together for the first team and everything. And I mean, it wasn't perfect, but Malik Rozier led a final drive and he threw a touchdown pass to Amon Richards for the win in that one. So I think the starters won 28-27 from what was told to us, because obviously scrimmages are closed. So we just kind of heard what Mark Richt told to the media. So yeah, just players making plays. Michael Jackson, or Sheldrick Redwine, excuse me, had an interception in that game. Javonte Dean, who's a JUCO transfer in his last year here at Miami, finally starting to put together his athletic gifts with demonstrable skill. At 6'2", and he's clocked a sub-4 440. Javonte Dean has all the tools in the world, but last year he was just inconsistent with his technique, really kind of floundering in the system. But he seems to now be streamlining that, and his knowledge, his production really coming together. So that was a big thing that I wanted to see and hear about. Trajan Bandy, he of the pick 6 against Notre Dame, is really stepping his game up. No, he's not the biggest cornerback at 5'9", but right now he's at a starting outside cornerback slot when Miami has 4 defensive backs opposite Michael Jackson. And then Bandy slides to the slot, and then Dean comes in as the 3rd corner in like a nickel package. So, Bandy having that flexibility and, just really great demonstrable skill. So, those kind of things are really great to hear. And just on top of that, being mostly healthy. Obviously, I spoke about a couple of nicks and dings. I mean, football practice is a collision sport. You're going to have some of those things, even with being as careful, quote unquote, as you can. And, Michael Irvin II and George Brown Jr., obviously having knee issues or injuries that, did require some kind of time off. But, yeah, otherwise, you're mostly healthy. That's, starting quarterback, Malik Rozier, healthy. Starting running back, Travis Homer, healthy. Amon Richards, one of the best wide receivers in all of America, finally back healthy. And if you remember, he hurt his hamstring in last year's fall camp, and that plagued him all the way throughout the year, because the hamstring is one of the largest muscle groups in your body. And, I mean, you use it with every single step. And once that thing is pulled and whatever, it just continues to snowball. So you don't have any of those kind of things. I mean, you just really, really a great camp from an injury standpoint. Not perfect, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, Miami's in a really good spot. working hard, and now we're just really going downhill towards the season. And like I said, it's time to shake the tree and see what rises or what stays and what falls. But yeah, we're in a good spot.
So we all know from watching LSU for a number of years that they always wear the white. They have not worn purple uniforms, basically. I'm sure they have once or twice, but basically the deal is that traditionally teams wear dark uniforms at home, and therefore they need to wear the white on the road. But LSU switches it around, so they always choose white, because if they're at home, they've got the white, then they wear the road whites because the other team has chosen to wear the dark jersey. So that gives me a picture of what the game's going to look like on the TV screen, and you're going to be right there in the stadium, Cam. So do we know if the Canes go with the green or go with the orange, and do you have a preference?
Oh, yeah, no, that's a great question. LSU does traditionally wear white at home in Death Valley, and they petitioned for that. There was a couple years ago, I think it was Oregon State or somebody random went down there, and they were like, no, we're going to wear white. And for like a night game in LSU, which is like unheard of, but they do have to petition the other team for that. And the other team, they were, being jerks. Hey, let's do it. And they said, no, you can't. We're going to not, let you have your tradition because we don't have to. But for the opener in Arlington, Texas, at Jerry Jones World, AKA AT&T Stadium, the Miami Hurricanes are actually going orange over white, and there is a new alternate jersey, actually, and I wrote about this week on State of the U. Adidas has partnered with a company called Parley for the Oceans, and they're making jerseys from upcycled ocean waste. So like plastic from the oceans being taken and then repurposed. And they're really actually kind of slick. So if you look at the numbers of the jerseys, the threading or the detailing is like what Parley is known for. They have this kind of ocean blue and white colorway that they do across all their engagements. That is their thing. So you see some of that detailing, like on the side, there's a subliminal shadow of like a palm tree and things like that. There's like orange cap sleeve kind of a thing. Green cap sleeves on the orange jersey. Excuse me. And the thing that started to tip people off is Adidas and Parley have partnered for different shoes and things like that. And actually somebody asked me randomly, hey, can you talk about shoes for the season? Because I need a new pair. And I included the Parley Ultra Boosts in there, which have that same, traditional colorway of that white and seafoam blue. And yeah, Miami players were wearing cleats in that same colorway. And it kind of looks like almost Dolphins aqua blue, if you will. So a bunch of people were like, hey, why are we wearing these cleats? This is different. Maybe there's an alternate uniform. And, Adidas said when they signed Miami to the apparel deal that they were going to make Miami the premium or premier team for their design and their jersey tech and all these different kind of things. So, yeah, you do have these, I think they're called Defenders of the Deep alternate jerseys. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think actually on Monday, the 27th, the University of Miami is going to put those jerseys up for auction as well, with the proceeds going to the University of Miami Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science, which is a world-renowned school for marine biology and marine sciences to, do research on helping the oceans and, all these different kind of things. So you have the cleats and the jerseys and everything, in that partnership with Parley and Adidas, which is really pretty cool. So, yeah, Miami's going to have, orange alternates with, orange or green details, and then the Parley detailing on the numbers and things like that for the opener. So it's I was thinking from when I initially saw the cleats a couple months ago that it was going to be more of like if you think of like the LeBron 11s, kind of like or the Miami Heat South Beach uniforms, kind of pink and green and things like that. That's what I had in my mind's eye. So when I finally was able to see the jerseys a couple days before they released, it was a little different. So I was kind of taken aback. But the more I look at them, it's really a sleek design. It's really cool. And plus the fact, it is for a good cause, like saving the oceans and, kind of curtailing some of the waste in everything, because, if you don't know, and I mean, I'm not going to be on my soapbox, but like, the earth is made like 70% out of water, man. So like these are things that matter to everybody, and especially being here in South Florida and being, very close to the coast and everything, like, the coastline and the oceans, like, these are things that matter maybe a little bit more to me and where I live than some other people. But, having that combination and that collaboration between Adidas and Parley for the new jerseys is pretty cool. So like I said, I wrote about it up on the State of the U, and you can go on there and check it out with some really, really great photos and information.
Yeah, I saw the news drop on the uniform selection and the whole process and what it means. And I was just thinking, what a process it must be to be a company, want to sell your jerseys or your gear to a particular college football program of that magnitude. I wonder what the process is of presenting that, presenting your pitch, the fabric, having all that looked at and reviewed, and the cost portion of it, and all of that reviewed and taken into account and accepted, and the deal done. Must be some kind of process there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot that goes into that kind of thing, and Miami's probably, obviously has a rep from Adidas, but you're going to have some of the higher ups at the company who are really doing those kind of things, and having met a lot of people who work for Adidas over the years, and from a variety of things, and just seeing a lot of the different designs over years, when Miami first went over to Adidas, people were talking about the look like the feathers on the arms of the jerseys, and that was like supposed to be like a hurricane swirl, and you take that and then you purpose that onto the jersey, and I liked them. It wasn't the best jersey ever, but I think Adidas overall has really tightened up their design of jerseys. And I know that years ago, everybody made fun of every Adidas jersey, but I mean, if you look at the Defenders of the Deep, I think the Adidas and Parley Prime Knit A1 jersey, I think is the official title. Man, it's a great design. So, it's pretty cool. And like I said, Miami is a premium program. It is a national brand. And Adidas is really partnered with Miami and put Miami at the forefront of the technology and design element for the company and their partnerships. And we're seeing that right now because, there are other Adidas schools, and there are even a couple of schools who have a more lucrative contract than Miami does, who signed it after Miami and things like that. But those schools didn't get the alternates for the opener. They didn't get this Parley coordination. They didn't get this collaboration. The University of Miami did, because of the strength of the brand across the board. So yeah, I'm sure that it was an intensive process, and these have been in the works for months. But it's pretty cool to see. So I'm glad to have that, and they'll look really, really great on television come September 2nd.
Cam Underwood, State of the U, joining us to talk Miami football with us 10 days away from the LSU opener. A number of comments on the live chat about the uniforms, nothing in particular that stands out, except for Terry King, who mentions that Miami could beat LSU even if they were naked.
I love the enthusiasm. Yeah, I mean, Miami's in a good spot for this game, I think, and everything. Just a couple minutes before I came on here, I saw that Ross Dellinger from Sports Illustrated reported that Christian Fulton, who was a 5-star cornerback signee with LSU a couple years ago, is being reinstated. And he had Fulton got a 2-year penalty for failing a drug test and tampering with it, they said. But the genesis of the appeal process was, no, he substituted a urine sample, which is a 1-year penalty, not tampering with a sample, which is a 2-year penalty where he cannot play. But yeah, it was kind of going back and forth with the NCAA, where he was his appeal was initially denied, so he was going to miss a second consecutive year. And I think this is after a redshirt year, so he hasn't played in 2 or 3 years. But like I said, right before I sat down to record this, I saw, like I said, from Sports Illustrated's Ross Dellinger, that Christian Fulton is going to be reinstated. So that gives LSU another talented player who is available for the game and things like that. I mean, not that LSU is really hurting for talent, because they do recruit very well and they have a very talented team. But adding Fulton will be a good addition for them. But with or without Fulton, I think that Miami's in a good spot. I've said it on here, and I've written it on stateoftheu.com, the website that, I've been managing for a couple of years now. Yeah, if Miami comes out and does what Miami needs to do, then, I'm fairly confident that Miami should be victorious.
Speaking of the powers that be in that situation, and then in others, and a similar situation in regards to off the field and legalities coming into it, and enforcement and authority and discipline and right and wrong and all of that. Just curious as to whether any of the message boards are lighting up there at Miami concerning Urban Meyer, because regardless of who you root for, it's one of the biggest stories we've seen in college football in a long, 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 long time, because of the subject matter and because of the success of the coach. Just anything there that Miami fans are either poking fun at, or a lot of programs across the country have stated that they're internalizing the situation or the story, and just to make sure that they have their process in order if they would have to be faced with that kind of situation.
Yeah, obviously, domestic violence and the allegations against Zach Smith are no laughing matter. So I'm not going to sit here and make any jokes about that, because there's nothing funny about that at all. In similar situations, Miami has removed players from the roster who had domestic violence or sexual assault allegations in the past. Jawan Blue and Eddie Johnson being linebackers who were kicked off the team for such allegations previously. And that's a thing that, for Miami, we've treated very seriously for a long time. And that is a thing about which, I'm not happy that it happens in Miami, but the response has been swift and has been decisive. Insofar as Urban Meyer, and especially with the report of the investigation that was released after the findings or whatever was announced. Well, first of all, the press conference was disgusting. To act as the victim for Urban Meyer in that situation is just absolutely disgusting. It was not about you or anything. It was about Courtney Smith and what was sent and said and all these different kind of things. Didn't even mention her name one time, had to be asked directly about that to put himself in the situation, say it's a shame that we are in this situation. You're not a victim of anything. So please stop that. The entire situation really insulted everyone's intelligence, anyone's intelligence. There's no rational person who believes these things. Urban Meyer and his wife are legendarily close. It has been written about, it's been talked about they've been married for almost 30 years. And to sit here and say and think that it stands to muster that your wife was sent something of the caliber that we've seen, because Brett McMurphy reported on, because he had the physical text messages to what was sent to Shelly Meyer, and then say, oh, I didn't know about my wife's text messages, of something of that nature, of someone, Zach Smith, who you are almost familial with because his grandfather was your mentor. So you have this close connection to the individual, and then on the side who the information was sent about, and then the very close proximity, obviously, to your wife. And to think, okay, well, yeah, it's fine. Well, I just didn't know about that. I can't call that lying, because that would be libelous and slander. So I'm not calling it lying. It does not stand to reason in my estimation. And the report afterwards, like I was going to say, the 23-page report, which I sat and I went through last night. I'm sorry, my Google Home is acting crazy as I'm talking here. But no reasonable person can read that report and what was in there and come away thinking that Urban Meyer should have kept his job. And as I saw many people say, Dan Wolken, Bomani Jones, many other journalists, myself included, in there, and just other people, the only reason that Urban Meyer has a job is because Ohio State did not want to fire him. So they did everything that they could to figure out, or to come to terms with not firing him. I think it was Dan Wolken and a couple other journalists. They said, yeah, that's why the meetings took 12 hours yesterday, because it took reasonable people that long to come to serious people to come to a very unserious decision by keeping Urban Meyer there. I think it is disgusting. I think it is atrocious. I think that it is one of the worst things that I've ever seen. And I am from Michigan. I went to Miami, and for football reasons and for sporting reasons, I've never seen it for Ohio State. I've never had any love for them. I've never had any collegial feeling for them. In a real life way, they disgust me now, in a way that even more so than previous. And like I said, I'm not going to make any jokes about the situation because it is very serious and things like that. When you have Shelly Meyer saying to Courtney Smith and reportedly to Urban Meyer, look, This guy concerns me. I'm scared of him. I'm scared of Zach Smith and what he might do, not only to her, but to me, because of his level of rage or whatever. And know that, but then say, oh, well, yeah, your wife didn't tell you that she might potentially be scared for her personal safety. Like I said, I cannot call that lying because I cannot do that. It does not stand to reason. I do not believe what it is that he said. And the entire enterprise of Ohio State University, the decision that they made, and the consequences that were meted out to the athletic director and to the coach, I just think are disgusting in full, like across the board, full stop, the end.
And if you just want to go to the letter of the contract, that speaks to what should have been decided in regards to the standards that the head football coach is placed under because of domestic violence and the obligation to report it and follow through on it.
Exactly. And it just, yeah, you're just, I mean, and, the other revelation talking about today or like late last night that Urban Meyer was asking people about how to delete text messages from his phone from more than a year ago so that when he went, those would not be available. So you obviously have direct tampering. That was discussed. I'm not going to say that he did that, but, when he met with the investigators, there were no text messages for more than a year ago. So logically, if you're asking about how to do that because you want to get rid of those things, and when you go to meet with the investigator, those things do not exist, the logical link is there. I'm not saying exactly what happened because I was not there, and legally I cannot say that. However, following the chain of logic of the events from the times that they were reported, it seems to be very clear. And yeah, again, just like you talked about, the verbiage in the contract, said a certain thing. The actions were different. Now, I don't know if, the exact verbiage in the contract, and obviously, the people who decided things at Ohio State maybe did not have the foundation for firing Urban Meyer for cause. And obviously you don't want to fire somebody and then pay them $38 million because $38 million is hard to come by, even at a very lucrative program with very, probably rich boosters and things like that. However, it just, again, it does not fit reasonable estimation of any reasonable person that he keeps his job regardless of your rooting interest, period.
So the two situations you just outlined that you cannot 100% draw a conclusion, but any reasonable person would make the conclusion would be, concerning the text message communication from Shelley Meyer to Urban Meyer. Everybody, all of us thought the same thing when the story first broke, that obviously this is a married couple. And then, as you mentioned, it's even reported based on just storytelling throughout their life together and his coaching that they're close. So the magnitude, we're not talking about, can you stop by and grab a gallon of milk at the grocery store kind of text. We're talking about the most weighty text you can imagine receiving, number one. And then the other conclusion that you just...
Let me stop you right there again. And just with the correction, the text messages were from Courtney Smith to Shelley Meyer,
sure,
not from Shelley Meyer to Urban Meyer. So just wanted to...
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then the other point that you made that was a logical conclusion. I lost it.
For deleting them.
Yes, if you're asking about it, and then in fact they don't exist prior to August 1st of last year, that's a logical conclusion. Again, you can't say it's a smoking gun. It's not, you see the guy over the dead body and you see he's holding a smoking gun. That's exactly what that means. It means that there is hardly any way you can feasibly imagine this person lying on the floor dead for any other reason than the guy holding the smoking gun, but you didn't see the shot fired. The committee at the same time, or the investigative committee, they went to other conclusions and drew other conclusions that seemed to be a little bit more of a stretch in regards to Urban Meyer's good faith, however they phrased it, his diligence in pursuing the matter, or in another way, they his remorse and his also because it's based on the decisions that he's made at Ohio State in reprimanding players, that he has that level of respect for women. So I'm not denying those things, but again, those are those two statements, those various statements, have a larger disparity between connecting the dots than do the two that you made in regards to um, showing guilt.
Yep.
All right. Didn't necessarily want to go down that path, but you raise a lot of good things about that situation. And that's just a bit baffling for a number of reasons. And I'm not the first guy that goes to the table or goes to social media anytime that there is a crime committed or a law broken. And then because somebody's accused of it, I certainly want due process to follow through and so forth. So I'm not at the forefront of the court of public opinion to accuse and convict somebody before it's been legally tried and determined. So I don't. I always side on the innocent until proven guilty. But so that's where Zach Smith stands, because none of those acts, at least the recent ones, weren't necessarily proven after they were investigated. But the Urban Meyer situation and doing due diligence based on his job description and just moral obligation, he didn't meet those standards by any stretch. All right. Cam, talking Miami football. So two things hit me. One was based on the chat here. Somebody called your defense the most complete in college football. Now, obviously, you don't have a firsthand knowledge of every defense in college football, but are you happy with the defense from a depleted defensive line compared to what you had last year with some of the great playmakers up front, RJ McIntosh in particular, all the way through the secondary?
Excuse me. Yeah, that's a good question. I spoke about this on the radio today. I think that there are the bodies in the building to replace the guys who were lost. I think there is enough talent. Obviously, you have a Gerald Willis III, who was a 5-star recruit years ago. Now he's back after a leave of absence. He hasn't basically played in almost 2 full calendar years. So that's a guy who can step in and replace, Kendrick Norton, RJ McIntosh, or some of the production there. You have progression from Pat Bethel. You have Tito Odenigbo, however you say it, transfer from Illinois, who's actually, been very good throughout the fall. You have Nessa Silvera. You have, somebody else at defensive tackle whose name I cannot remember right now. John Ford, I think I said, Nessa Silvera, those guys. So you have 5 defensive tackles. You have a bunch of pass rushers. Scott Patchin back on defense, finally healthy again. He's a guy who's battled some injuries at Miami, looking like he can be a contributor. Joe Jackson and John Garvin already. Your starting defensive ends. Demetrius Jackson, who's back after ending the year with a knee injury a little early. A couple of games early last year. He could play outside and inside, probably your best run defending defensive lineman. So, yeah, I think that there are bodies up front. And from an individual coaching standpoint at defensive line, Jess Simpson has worked in college. He's worked in the NFL. And other coaches from those levels used to go to his high school when he was working in Georgia to learn more about defensive line. So I'm not going to say it's a one-to-one replacement for Craig Kuligowski, because I say and I believe that Craig Kuligowski is probably the best defensive line coach in America, but it's not a far drop-off. It's probably negligible at best going to Jess Simpson. So from an individual coaching standpoint, I do believe that the players are going to have proper progression in coaching. Additionally, the overall defense, the scheme is to get upfield, be disruptive. So that comes from Manny Diaz with the X's and O's up front, or from the top down. So I think that, the guys up front are going to be put in a position to be successful. And I think that, there's the talent to be successful. Obviously, Miami's linebacking situation is one of the best in America. Romeo Finley now looking like he's going to be the starter at striker in front of Zach McLeod. But Zach McLeod started for 2 years. So that's another guy with starting experience. Romeo Finley was a former safety. He's now playing that hybrid striker position, which, against teams that, spread it out a little bit more, you have a little bit more athleticism. Shaq Quarterman's a second-team All-American by pretty much every single publication that has released a preseason All-American team. Michael Pinckney is one of the best playmakers on the defense, super underrated coming out of high school, but, he's just been making plays for 2 years. So I feel very strongly about that top 5 group. If you put in like maybe a Mike Smith, who's the backup to both Pinckney and Quarterman. So, yeah, I mean, those 5 guys at linebacker, that's a very strong room. Obviously, Miami has 3 very good linebackers are committed to this recruiting class coming up for 2019. So, if and when those, now juniors who started as freshmen and sophomores decide to leave to go to the NFL or they're out of eligibility, there will be troops to replace them, which, is a thing that Miami's getting into with having higher rated recruiting classes. And then there's all kinds of talent in the secondary. Michael Jackson is one of the best cornerbacks in America. Big dude at 6'1", probably 205. Had a really breakout season last year. He's a new father with a young child and everything. So, he's playing for a career to provide for his family, and he's elite. Jaquan Johnson's a first-team All-American by pretty much every single entity that has released a preseason All-American group. I think the Athletic is the only one that listed Jaquan Johnson as a second-teamer, not a first-team All-American. So, I mean, again, that guy was the franchise, and I've said it on this channel and was talking to you for years. He was a four-time first-team All-Miami-Dade player at the biggest classification in football, in Florida high school football. That's unheard of. It's literally a handful of people who have ever been 4 times first-team All-Dade County because of the talent that's there. Most players don't even play varsity their freshman year. He played varsity and was a standout his freshman year all the way through. Comes in, just a great player, really finally, progressing all the way through. He's an elite player, could be the best safety in all of college football. He's in Miami secondary. His very close friend, born at the same hospital on the same day, is Sheldrick Redwine. They played together growing up the entire way through. Redwine used to play corner, but I think he's found a home at safety opposite Johnson. And that pairing of safeties is one of the best in America. So you have 3 guys in Jackson, Johnson, and Redwine who are at the top of their game now, all as seniors. So they've seen a lot. They've been through a lot. They've been through the dark times and then, the high points as well here. And then you have Trajan Bandy, who I said, is a sophomore, down or through and through Hurricane, finally got his offer a couple of years ago, committed pretty much immediately. He played a big role as a freshman. He's going to start probably outside. Javante Dean, like I said, 6'2", and you can run a sub-4 440. If you have any kind of skill to go with that athleticism, boom. Gilbert Frierson, he's going to be really good. He's a freshman. DJ Ivy, Gervin Hall, Amari Carter. We got guys back there. Now, some of those other guys, after the first 3, they don't have the game reps and things like that, like I was talking about. But it's taken me a couple minutes to go through every position group on defense. But from, the line to the intermediate level with the linebackers, second level with the linebackers, and then, to the secondary, Miami has the players across the board. Now, obviously, they have to develop the skill and, make the plays and not make any mental breakdowns in the game. But I'm very confident with where the scheme of the defense is. I'm very confident where the talent of the defense is. Obviously, we need to tweak some things because at the end of the year, teams kind of figured out a couple of weak spots on the defense. And the last 4 games, I think Miami gave up 72% completions, which is unsustainable, obviously, as you can see by the results in those last 4 games, the last 3 of which were losses. So, yeah, I mean, obviously there needs to be tweaks and things like that. But I think that Manny Diaz is, getting to where the defense is fully where he wants it to be from a personnel standpoint. I think that he's able to do some really great things, including Manny Diaz is one of the best in America at cornerback blitzes and safety blitz or defensive back blitzes. And like I said, when you have guys like that, when you have talent like this, then I think things should be good. So, yeah, from a scheme standpoint and a personnel standpoint, I'm very confident with where Miami's defense is. I hope that we are as opportunistic with turnover luck this year as we were last year, because turnovers are largely luck and there's math to support that. And I know that people, say, oh, no, it's look, the numbers support the fact that it is random to an extent with turnovers. But Miami trains for those to try to get those with their ball skills in the secondary and, the rip and strip up front. So, hopefully those things stay the same. But, yeah, I'm in a very good spot with the defense right now.
We're 10 days away from Miami LSU. We've got Cam Underwood on the line from State of the U. Please join him right there for the very best in Miami football coverage as the Canes get set to defend their Coastal Division championship and make it back to the ACC championship game. Cam, one thing that came to mind for me, I always like these kind of conceptual type questions. Maybe I'm miscategorizing this, but if you look at the number of plays that should be run by the Miami offense, all things being equal, that it's a very competitive game, score in the mid to high 20s, something in that range, and the pace of play is what we would expect it to be. Let's say, and correct me if I'm wrong, let's say Miami runs 80 to 85 plays. And they want to throw 28 or 30 passes. They want to run it 45 or 50 times. I would love to know what you anticipate to be the running back distribution in terms of carries.
Yeah. I think that those plays might be a little
high.
Yeah.
Probably.
Just in general, because I'm trying to get to the game. There we go. Game log. So last year, Miami ran, let me see, we ran more than 70 plays only 4 times. Florida State, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and North Carolina, 73, 74, 75, which was the season high in 73. Other than that, yeah, I mean, you're going to run 58 plays against Virginia Tech, which is kind of crazy when you think about how that game went. And then in the 60s. So, yeah, so you're talking like a play per minute, maybe a little bit, I mean, about, give or take, 840. Sorry, I got to do the math. So we got 65 plays a game is what Miami averaged last year. So, yeah. So if you're talking, you want to be 35 or 40 run plays, I think that you're going to have 18 to 25 for Travis Homer. You're going to have another 5 to 10 for Rozier because he does add that QB run element. And then you're going to split them up between DJ Dallas, who's the number 2 running back, and he's a slash offensive weapon. Wildcat quarterback, slot receiver, returner, punt returner, kick returner, running back. He can play pretty much everywhere. So he's going to get some snaps a game. And then Trayon Gray has really been a revelation this fall at the running back position. And also, he can play single back, he can play fullback, a role similar to what Najee Davenport did as a junior and a senior at Miami. He started as a running back, and he's a bigger dude, at 6'2", 235 when he played. And then he played fullback because Miami was loaded back, 2001, 02, and then played some single back because, he had the skills for that, and even played single back in the NFL for many, many years. And so I think that Chalk Gray, his ceiling, I think, is that kind of a thing. But, yeah, I think that he's going to get some carries. And then you have Lorenzo Lingard, who, is a 5-star freshman, a 5-star recruit. He's the most talented recruit that Miami signed this last year. And he fell down the depth chart a little bit because of some struggles with pass protection, which we know at this level really matters. So I would say half-ish of the carries a game, maybe a little bit over. So half to maybe 60% will go to Homer. Then another 5 to 10. So we're talking maybe another 15, 20% to Rozier. And that leaves you, the other 20 or so percent, 25% splitting between DJ Dallas, Trayon Gray, and Lorenzo Lingard. So it's a good problem to have where Miami has so much talent that it's going to be an interesting balancing act for Thomas Brown to get everybody the ball. But yeah, I think that's how it's going to play out.
Got Cam Underwood on the line from State of the U, talking up the Canes with LSU on tap. Of course, a much anticipated game we've been waiting forever, and it's a Sunday night affair after most of the college football is going to be in the books. And that little rival there to the north, Tallahassee, is going to be the host of a Monday night game with Virginia Tech in town, a very important ACC game right out of the chute. Cam, so the chat is reminding me, not that they're yelling at me saying, hey, Mark, ask this, but the rhetoric within the chat is reminding me of a point that I wanted to hit on a number of times. Considering what happened last year, considering both good and bad, going to the ACC championship game, winning the division, also considering the amount of talent and being the overwhelming favorite, it seems as though almost, whether it's a Miami fan or on the other side a Clemson fan, but we'll take the Miami group, you have a large amount of the fan base just skipping the season, talking about how are we going to get ready for for Clemson, talking about just basically with the assumption that you're going to win the division and you're going to line up against Clemson again in the ACC championship game. And what's that going to look like? I see it every time we do a Miami live stream on the chat, just people talking about Clemson. How do we match up against Clemson? That being a constant thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to think that way because you can't set low expectations and have high achievement, just in life or, in sports. So looking at Clemson, because they're the class of the conference, they're one of, if not the best program in America right now in college football. So Miami should be looking at Clemson and trying to figure out how to get on their level. I mean, the last 2 times we played, Clemson's beat Miami 93-3. That's not an engagement that I'm looking forward to repeating. So obviously, the first goal is winning each game in front of you, or a vast majority. So win the games on the schedule, win the division, again, which honestly Miami should, because we're the most talented team and have a relatively easy schedule on the path towards that. So that's number 1. Number 2 is winning the conference, which means you got to go through Clemson. And I see that you have the helmet in the background there on your setup. But yeah, that is a reasonable goal. That is a thing that Miami has to figure out how to do, because the last 2 times, like I said, Miami has been unable to do so. And the last time was in the ACC championship game. So you have to beat that team to get that championship. And like I said, Miami is not back until championships are won. I was really thinking of national, but I mean, if you're beating Clemson, who's a national championship favorite, that's a kind of championship where you can say, okay, Miami's back. If both teams came in, let's just say both teams came in 12-0 to the ACC championship game, and Miami wins that game, regardless of how it is, whether it's 1 point or by a million over Clemson, and everybody, we used to all make jokes about Clemsoning and how they figured out a way with very, top-end talent to not have that production. But Clemson now has eschewed that. They're a premium program, and you beat them, that's a positive step forward. And then, you make the playoff, obviously, at 13-0, and then you let the chips fall where they're made. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that is the viewpoint and the desire and the plan. So, yeah, Miami should be looking that way. I think that the offensive line, which has been better by reports throughout the fall, needs to show that, again, progression and performance in games against other teams. And then against Clemson, really has to step it up, because they whipped us last year up front. It was terrible. Malik Rozier had no time. Even when he had time, then he kind of was seeing ghosts, because he was thinking, oh my God, one of these big dudes is going to come around the corner, and all those big dudes are back again. So, yeah, I mean, the offensive line, Clemson's defensive line is probably the best single unit in America from any team, full stop. So, yeah, obviously matching up against them, Miami's offensive line is not the best in America. I think it can be decent, but when you're going up against the best, and I mean, they have 5 stars from this past recruiting class who are playing third team. Xavier Thomas was like a top 5 recruit. There's another kid, I forget his name right now. He's a top 20 recruit. 5 stars, both of them. They're playing third team. That's the kind of depth they have on defensive line. So that's kind of concerning. Linebacker, okay. If there's a weakness on Clemson's team, it's going to be in the secondary. Now, Miami has the athletes to take advantage of that, but does the offensive line give time to Rozier, and does Rozier have the accuracy to now take advantage of those things? Because even last year, Jeff Thomas on that play-action play was butt naked wide open. I mean, backflips and cartwheels down the field. I mean, he was unguarded because he has that kind of talent, and he, we dialed up the proper route combination. Boom, he came butt naked wide open, but there was no time, and Malik Rozier threw it late and missed him. So that's where you're going to have that. On offense, we made Kelly Bryant need to hit throws to beat us, and he was pitch perfect, hitting all of the underneath and check down receivers. And then by the time it was 28-0, because he's doing that, opening up lanes for the run game, now Miami was just out of it, because, like I said, at the end of last year, teams had figured out what Miami was going to do, and the players did what the coaches told them to do, but the opposing scheme just took full advantage of the open areas, if you will. So seeing that come in a better way, and I don't think that if Miami makes it to the ACC championship game against Clemson, I don't think that we see Kelly Bryant, because I think that Trevor Lawrence, they're all world freshmen. I think that he wins that job. If not from game 1, then Kelly Bryant's on borrowed time, because that kid is the prototype, 6'6", 215 pounds. He can throw the ball a mile. Miami offered him as a high school sophomore, Trevor Lawrence that was, and I looked up his film, and I was like, oh, my goodness. He had 4,000 yards passing with 40 touchdowns and 3 interceptions as a high school sophomore. I mean, Georgia. I mean, like, this is that. So I don't even think that we'll see Kelly Bryant again. But I say all of that to say Miami has areas where they match up well with Clemson. Like I said, linebacker is a very good group for Miami. The secondary, I know that Clemson calls themselves wide receiver U now because their top guys do go to the NFL and all kinds of things like that. Sure, Miami has a secondary to combat that. Miami's defensive line, I think, can be a problem for anybody's offensive line if things are going well and obviously without injuries. So I think that, there's that. But obviously, you need to do that against Clemson because Clemson's playing, pinball scoring against Miami the last 2 times that we played. On the other side of the ball, like I said, going up against Clemson's defensive line is going to be the story of the game, but there is the talent to match up with their defensive backs and take advantage of that advantage that Miami would have. So for everybody having a view of Clemson and saying that's where we need to go, that's who we need to figure out how to beat, everybody's saying that. I mean, Florida State's been saying that even when Florida State was good recently, and even last year, they're trying to figure out, hey, how are we getting on Clemson's level? Louisville, hey, if we're going to beat anybody, we need to beat Florida State, we need to beat Clemson. Miami, look, all these other teams, they don't have the talent that we do. They don't have that. And we have better players. I think we have better coaching, and we should be able, Miami, to take advantage of that in the coastal side, which means if we handle our business there, we're going to run into Clemson. So everybody who's saying, look, we need to figure out how to beat Clemson. How do we line up against Clemson? What can we do against Clemson? That's where your brain should be. I'm not saying it should be 100% there because I'm not overlooking anybody. Florida State fans are talking about the Miami game on, October the 6th. They open with Virginia Tech. I've not heard a word from a Florida State person talking about Virginia Tech. I'm not overlooking anybody. We start against LSU. That is a talented team. I don't necessarily think that Ed Orgeron is a good coach. I don't necessarily think that he's going to have this job in 365 days because Miami should beat them. And then, they should lose other games along that way. That being said, Miami still needs to do that. So right now, focused on LSU. Intermediate term, focused on Florida State. Long term, I'm focused on Clemson. And I think that you can have those different levels of viewpoint and expectations. So I think it is a good thing that everybody is saying, look, we need to get on Clemson's level. We need to figure out how to recruit as well as they do, how to have the player progression that they have, how to have the performance on the field that they have. That's a great thing, but that's your long-term goal. So, yeah, short-term, LSU, intermediate term, Florida State, and the rest of the schedule, Florida State, and then the rest of the schedule, obviously, so we win that division. And then Clemson is the long-term, quote-unquote long-term for the term of the season. You can call that maybe short-term, depending on how long your viewpoint is going to be. But, yeah, it's a good thing to have one of the premier programs on performance in the sites to say Miami needs to get there, and that's when Miami gets there on Clemson's level and beats Clemson, then that will show that our program has come back to the state that we greatly hope and desire it to be. So I'm fine with everybody looking at Clemson, but don't only look at Clemson, even though that's a thing that you should look in the future to see.
So there's a handful of programs in the country that can look forward to a conference championship game, I think, and we all know who those teams are, and based on Miami's talent, what they accomplished last year, and based on the competition in the division, they could fill in that blank, even though I don't believe that, last year's team was not elite. We'll wait to see what happens with this year, but they certainly have an opportunity to rejoin the elite. Okay. The reason I brought up the topic, the spirit of the topic was not that Clemson shouldn't be the aim and the standard, considering what happened last year, both good and bad, Coastal Division favorites, and that's the goal. No issue there with it, the goal. It's just that I just felt a little disappointed. I felt a little bad for those fans who basically are writing past the entire season of 12 games. Let's just enjoy week to week. Who's up next? Especially LSU. If it was Appalachian State, I'd say fine, look past them. But I would even say just enjoy the first game, watch the first game, take it in. I just read it more from we're just can't wait to get to Clemson. We just need to get to Clemson. I can't wait to get there. Just to enjoy the season.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you talked about at the top. We've been without college football for a long time. So when it's back, enjoy it while we have it. One of my favorite quotes is, the road is the thing, not the end of it. Travel too fast and you miss what you're traveling for. So, yeah, enjoy the journey, man. I mean, this is, again, a good team. We have a marquee game. the first of many, really top-end marquee, not even the first, because we played Notre Dame the last couple of years, and we played other, great out-of-conference games before that. So another top-end out-of-conference game. It's a prime time, Sunday night, only game going on in America, a premium location against another national brand for LSU. Yeah, man, so don't just try to rush to the end all of a sudden for no good reason. I mean, I know, I just had a birthday and, I'm a little older than I used to be, and everything. But yeah, when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I want to be I want to be grown up eventually. And then you realize, dude, I got to work all the time. And, my paycheck's almost spent before I even get it because I got all these bills that I got to take care of and everything. And you're like, man, I wish I would have just enjoyed that time that I was in middle school, high school, college, just, carefree and rebel and all that. Do the same thing with college football season, man. I mean, like, the end is going to be here. And then everybody's like, oh, man, I miss football, and it went so fast. So enjoy the journey. We have great games. We have a great home schedule. LSU to start. You have Florida State at home down here in Hard Rock Stadium, looking to win at home against them for the first time since 2004. I want to say it's been forever since we've seen a win here in South Florida against the rival team. So that's going to be a major thing. Boston College on a Friday night. You have another home game on a Thursday night. So you're going to have premium games all the way throughout. If everything, holds all the way to the Florida State game, there's no other game that weekend that is a premium game such as this. So that could be another Miami Hurricanes host game day kind of thing, which was electric and awesome last year. You're going to have, great recruiting business along the way. You're going to have, hopefully, players playing to their potential, like Amon Richards reinserting himself into the national conversation. You're going to have new faces who step up in all these different kind of things. You're going to see some great plays, all across the board. You remember Jaquan Johnson's one-handed interception against Virginia Tech last year and those black jerseys spinning and running up the field. You remember all these different things? There's going to be plays like that this year. Don't take those for granted. Enjoy all of that. And then at the end of the season, with Miami hopefully handling their business, winning the Coastal Division again, and then getting to Clemson, now we can reset and focus on that now. But don't speed to the end. Enjoy it, because Miami should be beating teams to sleep this year. We should have games. And Mark was talking earlier, Miami scores mid-20s and everything like that. That's going to be that's not the expectation. Miami has the talent to score, 35, 40 points a game across the board because they have that kind of talent. Don't you want to see that? Don't you want to see this team that we suffered through with Al Golden getting blown out 1,000,000-0 and all these different kind of things? Don't you want to see that team now not be the nail, but be the hammer? I want to see that, bro. I'm here for that. I'm enjoying all of that. So every step along the way, I'm going to enjoy it. And then when we get to Clemson, we'll deal with Clemson because they're going to be out there. So, hey, Clemson fans, I know that some of you guys are probably watching. Hey, come the first weekend in December, we'll talk. But right now, LSU, you're on the clock. And then we got teams after that, Savannah State, Toledo, Florida State, everybody else. But I'm enjoying this journey, and I urge you Hurricanes fans to do the same.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Well stated. All right. So that was my spirit of bringing up that topic. I just thought, man, just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. And Cam explained it, and he pretty much explained exactly what was up here and in my heart is just, even if it's Virginia week or Syracuse week, like it was last year, whoever it is from the other division, Boston College and Florida State, they're going to be difficult games in the other division, but regardless. And then my only other point, and then I'll let you go, Cam, is you brought up the Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence scenario at quarterback for Clemson. My only thought there is what's going to be fascinating possibly is if Clemson's off to what we would expect to be an 8-0 start, let's say, and Kelly Bryant is very pedestrian. Does Dabo Swinney pull the plug on an undefeated team and make the quarterback switch thinking, yeah, we know we're going to win the division or maybe even the ACC with Kelly Bryant at quarterback, but we know what the end game is and our ultimate goal. And to get there, we need to get the kid ready for the ultimate prize and get him that 5 games or 6 games. That'll be an interesting dilemma to see play out if it happens that way.
Yeah, I don't think that even because, I mean, you're really talking about the same kind of scenario that Miami had last year with Malik Rozier, where obviously throughout the year, the performance was not elite all the way through, but the team kept winning games, even in spite of kind of poor performance at times. I don't even think that it's going to get as far as 8-0 before that's a conversation. I mean, the clock on Kelly Bryant starting I mean, the expiration date is coming up very, very soon. I don't know if it's going to be game 1 or it's going to be game 3 or 4, but I don't see it going 8 games even. I really honestly don't. Trevor Lawrence is, a generational kind of talent. He's the talent. He's way better of a prospect than Kelly Bryant is. And if the difference in performance is negligible, which from all the reports, because I've been reading a lot of stuff about Clemson. I've been following them because obviously, they're a program that we go, and we face, or hopefully we'll face in the championship game scenario and things like that, similar to like I read about Florida State, because that's a team that we compete against. I mean, it's not like Lawrence is 4th or 5th team or anything like that. Like, he was in for the spring. He came in early. He played well then. He's continuing all that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a handful of games, not 2 handful of games. It won't get to 8, I don't think. But yeah, I mean, even in the short term, as a freshman versus a senior, I think that the performance level for Trevor Lawrence will be higher than Kelly Bryant, because quite honestly, Kelly Bryant was not very good. I think his best game was against Miami because, down a couple bodies and like the scheme, obviously they just figured out how to combat that. But Kelly Bryant's kind of average at best. I mean, he's Jag. He's just a guy. But Trevor Lawrence is like that dude. He's not just a guy. Like, he's that guy. And yeah, I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. And I think that everybody knows that. And I think that even though he won't necessarily like it or admit it, I think that Kelly Bryant knows that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not living in a vacuum, like, okay, cool. He was able to beat out Hunter Johnson, who was a 5-star recruit from Indiana. And then Johnson left and he went to Northwestern. So he's going to sit out this year. He's going to be closer to home. You get a better education because a Northwestern education is phenomenal. And then you're playing in the Big Ten. You're a little closer to home and things like that. And, obviously he's going to be the most talented kid on the roster, where that wasn't the case, in Clemson. But could Hunter Johnson have eventually overtaken? Sure. Zarek Cooper? Sure. But Trevor Lawrence is that guy. I mean, like, he's a different player than Deshaun Watson, but that kind of caliber of player, where it's not if he starts as a freshman, it's when. So I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. And, for all of the talk of Clemson being wide receiver U and, everything like that, I think when you have Trevor Lawrence out there, I think that the receivers across the board are going to see success that they haven't even seen, because, Deshaun Watson ran for 1,100 yards one year before he ran for 700 his second year and things like that. I mean, but you're not going to have those kind of rushing numbers from Trevor Lawrence, which means you take those numbers away. Maybe you give a few of those rushing yards, maybe 100 or 2 to the running backs, but the rest of that's going to be passing, because Lawrence wants to throw the ball. He wants to throw like deep. So you have Justin Ross, who had the nasty one-handed catch that Clemson social media put up. That was crazy. You have all these guys on that roster. You're going to really push that ball down the field. It's going to be a different big play offense from a throwing standpoint with Lawrence. So, yeah, I think it's going to be just a matter of time. If not the opener, I don't see that Kelly Bryant is starting by October the 1st, honestly.
Please like, comment, and subscribe right here for the best discussion in college football insight from the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers around, like Cam Underwood from State of the U. Join him right there, State of the U, for Cam and the rest of the crew covering Miami sports across the board. Football, of course, front and center with LSU coming up in 10 days. Go to it, Cam.
Yeah. The last thing that I want to say, and I know that, I usually do my website plug at the end, but, Mark did a great job with that. And I hope that you are, reading State of the U, because we do have comprehensive Miami Hurricanes coverage across the board. And we have a great team of writers and contributors. So we're doing a lot of great things. But speaking of that, I hinted at a couple of things the last time I was on, or I hinted at something, and that's finally come to fruition. For the last few months, I was working on a feature called The Recruiting Rules, where we looked at, or I, with the help of some other recruiting writers and analysts, looked at what teams do, what are the traits and things that they do to recruit championship caliber rosters. So everybody knows that you want to have the blue chip ratio that Bud Elliott, my colleague, coined, more than 50% of blue chip recruits on a team. But other than wanting that, how do you get that? So I put together a really great piece. I think it was 11 different recruiting writers with more than 100 years combined experience following and covering recruiting. And I left the link up on the front page of the website. It's still pinned up there. Great graphics by our guy, Mike Meredith. It's called The Recruiting Rules. There are 9 different installments. And I talk a lot about it. I've been blogging for about 8 years now. So, with on top of my experience, I've worked in high schools. I'm close to the recruiting thing. There are other, people out there who do more individual interviews with recruits than I do. But that's fine. It's okay. I could do that if I wanted, but I like taking a global view of things. So I really, really, really worked hard on this. Had some really great guys. Bud Elliott, he contributed a couple of things, both in that Go 90 series on Payton, Mississippi. He had a quote about recruiting that I put in there. Tyler Donahue from 247 Sports, Andrew Ivins from 247 Sports, my good friend JT Wilcox from the Miami Sports Tribune, a couple local beat writers, who cover recruiting and preps and things like that as well. So put together, I think, a really dynamic thing. Use a lot of their quotations. Obviously, I'm a Miami blogger, so I use some examples from Miami. Manny Diaz, the coach, he had a couple things talking about recruiting in the media. Another couple coaches that I'd spoken to previously when I worked in a high school, I didn't put their names in there because I didn't go back and follow up and say, okay, can I use this quote that you gave me? So I used it as an anonymous source, and I know that would anger Will Muschamp, but Will Muschamp can be mad about anonymous sources. But again, it's called The Recruiting Rules. I worked really hard on it, and that's what I was hinting at last time. I really hope that you guys do go and check that out. I worked really hard on it, and I think that it's a really great piece. I think it's a feature that we can refer to back for many, many years because it does lay out kind of the landscape and the foundation of what teams do to build their championship rosters. So that's my last plug. I really hope that you guys check it out, The Recruiting Rules, over on the front page of stateoftheu.com. That was all me. I didn't have really any help other than doing the interviews with the other analysts. So, yeah, like I said, it was a long time in the lab working on that. So please check it out, and then comment and write me. You can find me on social media at Underwood Sports, at the State of the U. My email address is in the bio for both of those profiles, or you can just leave a comment on the site. But yeah, like I said, that's my first really big long read feature, and I hope that you guys enjoyed, and just give me some feedback and let me know what you think about the recruiting rules.
So please do that. I know that a ton of you, because when Cam is absent, you make us aware of that you want to hear from Cam. So this is a benefit to him, and it's going to be a benefit to you because you love college football, and by extension, most of you love recruiting, and you're going to learn. Not you keep up with specific players or specific teams. This is going to, as Cam outlined, give you a broad perspective on the recruiting game and how it works and what you want and how you build a roster and all those things. So it's outstanding. I've read Cam's work many, many, many times. And I'm not a recruiting guy, but I need to understand it based on what I do as well.
Right.
So I rely on guys like Cam to come on and talk about specific players and needs on teams. But in regards to understanding the approach for elite programs and the player perspective and all that is contained right here as I brush through the 9-part series, it's all right there. Very good stuff. We've got a newsletter starting in week 1 of the college football season. It's going to be released that Monday. So while you're emailing and commenting to Cam's work, drop us a line at MarkRogersTV@gmail, and I'll get you on the newsletter that is to be released week 1. All right, Cam, man, you did a lot of work here. Go have a good rest of your night. You've earned it.
Yeah, man, thanks, and I appreciate it. So, I was absent last week. I know Mark was reaching out to me because my birthday was last week, Friday the 17th, the annual day commemorating and celebrating the most awesome day in the history of the world, is what, trademark my birthday is called. So thank you to everybody for that. And honestly, I'm here all the time, so it's always a great conversation. Be sure you check me out on social. Be sure you check out State of the U. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram. Obviously the website, all those State of the U, the State of the U, I want to say on social. But yeah, go check it out. We're going to be here for the Miami Hurricanes season. And like we talked about earlier, enjoy the ride because it's going to be a good one.
All right, Cam, we will see you soon. Thank you so much.